like travel, like it's so funny. I have this weird relationship with travel where it's like, um, I grew up, I was born in Israel, and I'm not political. One of my best friends is Palestinian. She's a Palestinian comic. But I grew up, I was born in Israel, and then when I was a year and a half, we moved to Melbourne, Australia. And then when I was 9, we moved to Chicago. But in that time, in between 2 and 9, or year and a half and 9, we moved a lot. Like a lot, and we stopped and all sorts, like we just traveled. There's a lot of travel. So I have this kind of like exhaustion still at almost 70 now from travel. But I will tell you, my dream though, my I got an amazing year last year financially, and like all and I get it was crazy with Corona and everything. But so I'm like, oh my God, like my big fantasy, the big thing I want to buy is still like travel business class to Europe. So I have this like weird relationship with travel, but like it I feel
It's
like
like the dream is there, but you're like, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that yet, just because I just did it too much.
right, like it do like I but see that's what yes, like it's it's just like it's too much. Like it was too much growing up, like too much travel, like constantly being picked up and being taken around the world by these yahoos, and like my parents.
But just think it would be at your own pace, the way you want to do it. It would be completely different.
That's true. And I would hire you in a heartbeat. Don't get me. I will hire you in a heartbeat when I do it. So like, because I saw you traveled business class recently.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of, I think some of the airlines, I don't know if they don't know what to do with their big planes, but that was a Dallas to Cancun segment, which is not normal for them to have, the lay down seats and everything. So pleasant surprise, and just very interesting that on that kind of trip, usually those are for the long haul ones, but hey, I'll take it. I think they're trying to, they've cut down on a lot of different, itineraries and routes, and airlines are now probably just trying to get as many people, I hate to say, on a plane at a time, unfortunately. I mean, we're going back to that place of where they've got to maximize space, and they've got to try and get as many people on, one set of fuel.
Which makes sense. It's heartbreaking. It's scary. Like it's all the things at once,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
But
I do.
when you
Yeah.
think about it though, if you saw my pictures, I mean, where I was sitting, I mean, I had my little, like my little section, my little bubble right there. So I really didn't have to worry about being around other people. So there are ways of, I feel like, of feeling safer.
Well, and so I want to get to that. Yeah, because like we're filming this like or recording this like in the hopefully towards the end of a pandemic,
Right.
of the pandemic. It's feeling like hopefully it's the end ish.
Yeah.
But so I want to kind of go through the origin tale of you, because like I having worked with you, like, and I'm so inspired by you. I think you're one of those people that's like the real deal. You're like the real kind of creative entrepreneur, like living the dream. Walk me through it. Like, was travel always something you did? So again, in contrast, where I'm saying I was kind of fatigued by it by the time I was 13,
Yeah.
was travel always something you aspired to? Or was it always something you did growing up as a kid?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I had the complete opposite experience. So, growing up, my family, we didn't travel. I'd never really even been outside. I always called it I talk about being in a bubble. Being in my bubble. Grew up in Arizona. Didn't travel very far. Occasionally, we'd go to Disneyland in California on a random occasion, but that was like an overnight road trip. Go for like a day or two, and then back. Great memories, but it was one of those things where I thought everywhere was like Arizona. Really took until I was a little bit older. I'm like, you know what? I think I need to get out and see the world and see where other people live and how are they living, and what are different cultures like. And so it was definitely something I aspired to. I thought, I have to get out there and explore. And it actually wasn't until I was in college that I took my first trip. Actually, I first trip was 6 weeks to Europe. So it was kind of like one of those things where I'm like, I'm just going to go big. Right. And went by myself. Actually, it's interesting. I went by myself, but also met up with other travelers that were traveling solo. So it's still an interesting concept that people don't even realize is out there if you don't have people to travel with. But I was young. I was 18 and didn't know if I really wanted to navigate Europe by myself. So went that route, and it was phenomenal. Like, it was just like I was nervous and I was homesick, but then by the end of it, it was okay. Like, where am I going next? I have to see more because this is so different than anything I've ever experienced before.
And so like at that point though, so you're in college, like do you feel like, oh, I'm gonna go be a teacher or I'm gonna be a business person or kind of where were you at? Like how did you navigate college in terms of what you want to do and all that stuff?
Yeah, it was interesting because so it's funny you mentioned business and becoming a teacher. So I started college getting my business degree and I did finish my business degree, but then midway through thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with this degree. And actually started in the School of Education. So I actually graduated both with a business degree and an education degree, secondary ed. And because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But while I was in college, especially after coming back from that first trip, I had I had actually booked that trip through a brick and mortar travel agency. So when people always think of travel agency, the old school kind, it was actually right down the street from campus. And I went and applied for a job with them. And they wanted someone that was going to work like, I mean, almost full time and trying to finish 2 degrees in 4 years. I still was, very much like listening to my parents and getting their guidance. And they were like, no, you can keep I was in retail. They're like, you can keep your retail jobs, but you're not taking on this full-time job at a travel agency because you're going to get off track with school. So it kind of was there where I was like very intrigued and wanted to get into travel, but that wasn't the practical thing. And I kind of grew up a little bit with you have to find a career and something, that's going to be meaningful and that's, practical. And so I actually I put that on hold and just kept traveling. So the next summer, I went to where did I go? Ireland, Scotland, and Wales for 4 weeks. And so I just kept traveling. Like I just was like, all right, if I'm not going to work and travel, I'll keep going. But then quickly moved on into my career, and it was really when I hit my last corporate job before starting my agency, and I had really no time off to travel. I had 2 weeks a year. Everyone always thought it was weird when I asked for all 2 weeks at one time. And I finally thought I have to get back to travel and I have to find that flexibility to be able to do it.
It's so funny. Like something that just like clicked for me too is like, so you and I have spoken about this too. Like I come from a theater background, definitely heard that good stuff growing up. Like it's not practical, right?
Right.
And now all day long I'm directing and telling stories with people. So it's like it's just so funny how I think was and maybe still is this misconception of corporate being the only thing that's practical and stable, right? So
Right.
you clearly are exhibiting signs of like, oh my God, travel, travel, travel. Like it's like you're like, well, yeah, there might be a nice salary here, but I don't get to travel. Travel becomes the priority. So you're like tapping into this like love for it, right? And it's so funny that like, and again, no disrespect to parents, but like I'm a parent now. It's like I'm gonna fuck her up every which way to Sunday, I'm sure. But like I don't want to, but like um it's interesting. Like I feel like as parents, like obviously, we try to like make things safe and we try to be like, don't
Oh,
do that
yes.
because right. But it's astounding how a lot of parents growing up, at least in our generation, like that option of like, why don't you create your own thing? That wasn't something that was taught, right? Like,
Right.
which is like down the middle. Just you want to be a traveler, you want to make money, you want to do business, you want to work, find something down the middle, right?
Exactly.
So was that like so you look excited now. Like was that was that even something that entered into your scope of like possibility or you're like, no, you can't make money as a in travel. What is that, right?
It was, I mean, so when I was in the corporate world and, was struggling with, how do I travel more? Felt like I was, well, I mean, at the time was working year round, 365 days a year. But for someone else, and I'm like, I want to kind of create my own life, my own lifestyle. And I really started researching because I didn't really think of any way other than going and working at a travel agency, which I think at the time, I don't know if I knew of any like brick and mortars that even existed anymore. And that's why people always ask like travel agents, do they still exist? Well, after 9/11, there was a really big hit to the travel industry, kind of very similar right now with the pandemic. And a lot of travel agencies closed, and that's happening right now too. And so I didn't really ever give it a lot of thought until I started digging in more. And I thought, all right, travel agents are starting to come back, but more with an online presence, less, having a brick and mortar store. But I kept researching, and finally was like, okay, I think I could make a business out of this. But then it became you talk about getting a job and, having a little bit of practicality. You get your paycheck every 2 weeks. Going from that to straight commission, I thought, well, I can't do this. Like, why would I give up something? I'm doing well here and I make good money. Why would I go to potentially making less? And it took time for me to finally say, you know what, like, is money going to truly make you happy? And sure, we all need money to, pay the bills, do some travel, do some fun things. But I didn't feel that there constantly needed to be this, like, climbing the ladder, need more, more, more. It was, where am I going to be happy? And I don't think having more is always better, right? Except for travel. That's always, the more is always better. So yeah, it really took probably like 5 years for me to finally realize, like, all right, let's make it a thing. But it really, you've met my husband Jeremy, I give him all the credit. He was the one that really pushed me to make the jump. Like, when I said I can't do this, I have to stay in a corporate job, and he was like, no, like, you've researched this too long. I have full confidence in you. You need to do it.
Jeremy is. I love Jeremy. He's very persuasive. I can imagine. Like,
Yeah. Yes, he is. He's very persuasive, and also, he is not as risk adverse as I am. And so I think, you talk about, parents and things, and I wonder if it's because he grew up in, a family that his dad is an entrepreneur, and he saw, yes, there are ups and downs. There's good years, there's bad years, but if you want to have, his dad, coached his, teams when he was younger and was there for his games, and he was able to create a lifestyle for them while doing what he loved. And I think that was what he really wanted for me, because he's like, I know you're not loving not traveling, right? So how do we get you loving what you want to do? So yeah, give him tons of credit for believing in me. And really, I mean, here it is. I'm in my 5th year of having my agency, and I can't imagine not have ever starting it.
well, and and again, we're building to 2020 in a second here.
Yeah,
Because I can't imagine what that. And we met during 2020, and I kind of got glimpses, but I want the full story.
sure.
Um, but something to, like, to your credit too, whether whether it was learned or acquired or developed or just innate. Something that I love about you is, upon meeting you, I think we met last year around the summer, maybe, or like maybe late spring.
No, actually, I think it was like March, or it was right as the pandemic started. Because remember, we first
Oh,
filmed in May.
yeah. Oh my God. Okay. So
Right.
boom. Okay. Yeah, it's our year anniversary. Oh my God. Knowing you and Jeremy, like, this is, in general, it's good to know good-looking people like you and Jeremy, where it's like, it's good, but it's good. Okay. So it's a year anniversary of having this much gorgeousness and brilliance. Don't get me wrong. It's not just the gorgeous. Um,
Nice.
I tell like it is. But something that's incredible about you specifically, and so again, so I meet you, and then, like, literally 5 minutes later, I have emails like you're connecting me with people, and you're like such a skilled networker. And some of my favorite clients that I had from last year that were consistent clients came from you, and so, like, oh my God, like, I owe you big time credit. Um, and again, I'm gonna book the business class through you, but like, how do you? Did you know that you're able to do that? Did you know that you're able to be such a skilled networker, such a great conversationalist, such a, like, a people person? Like, was that? Did you know that from corporate, or because that to me is like a big one when you go into entrepreneurship?
You're gonna really laugh at this. So actually, because people all the time will say, yeah, you're a people person, or you seem so extroverted. And most people don't know I'm actually incredibly introverted. And this has been very much a learned, not even just speaking. Well, I've learned the speaking on camera best through you, but also learning to be, a connector and a networker has really been something I've had to, again, push myself into getting into, and really saying, like, you know what, this is only going to help your success. It's only going to help other people. I really believe in, the concept of give and take. You give and you give and you give, and not that you necessarily take, but things are going to come back to you, and there's always that balance there. But it's funny, because when I was in corporate, you get your yearly review, and I, for the most part, always had great reviews, like, your work is fantastic, you're so reliable, this and that. But the one thing that I was always told, it was always the bad on my review was you you don't relate well to your coworkers. You're too focused on the work. You aren't building enough relationships. Things along the lines of like I never wanted to go to lunch with anyone. I just wanted to sit at my desk and work because again, I've always been brought up with having like that very strong work ethic, and that why, not that it's a waste of time, but like you got to work, and going to lunch, well, that's a waste. I'm going to eat here at my desk and I'm going to work. And it took me leaving corporate to realize that I needed to surround myself with other people, that I'm going to learn from, that they can learn from me, and that we're really going to kind of lift each other up. And so it took a long time for me to realize that I was holding myself back because I wasn't creating these strong relationships with other people. It's taken, I mean, a lot. Like I do a lot of, personal development. I read a ton of business books. And like I mentioned, Give and Take, that's actually the name of one of the business books that I love. But it's all about, having that very giving nature, because I definitely, I believe in karma. Things are gonna, they're gonna come back to you in tenfold great ways. It took hearing that kind of feedback for me to realize, like, what is it, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. And while I was still doing well at my job, I knew that that was holding me back, and that you can't do the same things in life over and over again and expect different results. So I knew with my business starting out, I couldn't just, especially working from home, I've always worked from home. I can't just stay in my office by myself all of the time. That's like one of the biggest things. That's not going to get my name out there. That's not going to, help me network and meet other clients. It's not going to help me, build my brand. And so it took that feedback, and asking, I had to get the courage to ask colleagues like, hey, I want to work on this skill, can you tell me a little bit about your experience with me? And I mean, I had people tell me, you know what, like you're unapproachable, you're sometimes, you're not easy to talk to, you can sometimes be difficult to work with. Yes, I was told all of these things, and I definitely, I can see it. Like you really have to the self-awareness piece really had to come into play. And sometimes I think a lot of people mistake hard work. Yes, you have to have it, and you have to have a good work ethic, but also people just want to be around other great people, and people that make them feel good, people that again they can learn from. And it took me having that awareness, like, what, no wonder I'm lacking in this area, because I'm not valuing other people the way that I should be. So that was, a very tough pill to swallow. Yeah. And a lot of people, I mean, I'm sure the ones, if they ever see this recording, the ones I used to work with in corporate, they're probably gonna be like shaking their head up and down. But, now, I mean, I do feel like I have completely transitioned in, again, the way that I want to be around other people and the way I want to support other people. And I think that has what has contributed to my success, and why even during a pandemic, my business has done well, because people know whether it's good times or bad times, our relationship is always going to be there.
What made you, in their eyes, hard to work with?
Well, I mean, I can say one thing I've had to really work on is again, understanding. I had to get out of that whole old like 8 to 5 thought, and especially being, as an entrepreneur, we don't work 8 to 5. I mean, it's, you have all the flexibility in the world, but most of the time you're working way more than that, or you're working weird hours, or it's 10 o'clock at night and you still have your laptop out. So for me, it was getting out of that thinking, starting my business. You know what? If I need to, have a couple like extra phone calls today to make sure I'm connecting with someone that I haven't talked to in a while, or I need to make sure I go to this networking event because I haven't left my office in a couple days, that, what, it's okay that I'm not at my desk working all those hours. I can always work later. And I had to get out of that kind of old school mind frame, first of all. And I think that took some of the pressure off of, I can't, or I shouldn't be making time for other people because I need to be working. Right. So that was, definitely, I think one of the biggest things was kind of changing that mindset. But also, like I said, it took a lot of just personal development and me asking for feedback. I think that's the thing too. Why I'm always even asking my clients for feedback. I talk to other people all the time. If I'm working on something, hey, can you tell me what you think of this? And I think that's the only way that we get better. But it takes a lot of courage to like take a step back and say, you know what, like how are other people perceiving me, and what is it about me that maybe I need to work on?
Um, have you found in your networking that a lot of entrepreneurs have that same struggle of going from corporate and transitioning where they go, I'm going to bring what I learned in business here and apply it to this thing. And it doesn't always pan out. Like it's not the same set of skills.
I actually, well, from my experience networking, I at least, and I'm not going to say I'm like a master networker. I mean, I still have a lot to learn, and I think it's something I think everyone struggles with. Networking is not easy, and if you are not super outgoing, it can be very nerve wracking, and like something where I'm like, I'm just going to stay in my PJs and not, not go out or not get on the Zoom or whatever. But I think a lot of people approach it the wrong way. Instead of like, from what I find is there's been, groups I've been a part of and I've left because you go and it's like they want to just sell you right away. And instead of looking at it as networking is, it's, I think of it as like all of these different lines going a bunch of different directions. And it's, this person knows this person who knows this person. It's not, oh, I want to sell to you. And that's where the line ends, right? And it's really developing those relationships. So when the right client comes along, it could be three people down the line. They're going to say, you know what? I know Samantha and I'm going to refer her. I know that everyone I meet is not necessarily my client. It's not necessarily someone that needs my assistance. They, may never want to travel, or they may travel a time that they don't need help. So taking that focus off of, oh, I have to sell them on why they should work with me, and more like, how about we just get to know each other, and you're going to find out how much I love travel, how much I love helping people, and you're going to feel really good about sharing my name in the future. But I also know, and it's different for every industry, but I play a very long game. People spend a lot of money to travel. They're not going to, after just meeting me, necessarily give my name to someone else. And I think it takes a lot of additional touches. Again, you talk about people having to know, like, and trust you. And that is something that has to be built on, and to be able to build those relationships to get there takes time. So the way I always look at networking, I'm not going, whether it's to events or if I'm invited to things or if there's a Zoom, how am I going to give people like, here's where people are traveling now, or here's well, I never really talk about travel deals because that's a whole nother story. Usually those are never end well. But it's never about the what I want from you. It's always, what can I be doing for you, or how can I connect you to someone else, or a resource I heard about, you should probably check out this, or I know of someone else that you should connect with. To me, that's going to serve my business way longer than that one time I give a business card to someone.
See, this is where, oh my God, this is where I love you so much. Like you exemplify that perfect, like I call it like a business artist, because you so like, even just looking at your, your social media, like I said up front, like, I'm like, I have this like love-hate relationship with travel, right? Where I'm like, oh, it's like a shitty excuse just to love coming back home, like,
Right.
um, I used to do a bit in stand up about sightseeing, how like sight and seeing are the same word. And it's like, that's literally what you're doing. I'm like, what, where else are we doing that? Like sound, hearing, like what, but
Right.
and I'm like, again, and the punchline was, it's a shitty reason to stay in a hotel. Like, but regardless, but like you embody, like, looking at your social media, you just love travel. Like, it just makes so much sense to you, and you see how it fills your bucket, and it just makes you so happy. And then that's why we trust you. That's why, like, I'm like, especially what you said up front too, about like that, if you're by yourself, like, and you want to travel with other people, I like, that's a big thing for me. Like, I think too is I'm like totally single now, like back in life at almost 70. And it's a whole different I'm like, what do you do
I
with it
think
when you
I'm
travel?
actually older than you, so don't go too far.
I know, as I said, I'm like, our generation, and I was like, my second time I said 70, I was like, that sounds really mean. Are you really? You're not older than me. No way.
Yeah, I think I am.
I'm 40.
Oh, I'm 38. Okay, we're right there.
Right there. It's similar, it's inches away. I'm just kidding. It's not
Yes.
good. You're still healthy, I had to do hair stuff yesterday. I had to put in a hair serum. True story. Like back here, it's yeah, we're starting to
Come
see
that
some.
time.
It's becoming that time. Everything else I feel like is glorious, but like back here, we're starting to see skin. Oh my God, it's doing it again. I quit. Listen, I'm not quitting. The point is that it's a stop. Okay. Okay, so anyway, but so how did you like this is my question to you is as you were crafting, so this was really cool for you talking about networking, which I think is crucial to entrepreneurship and really makes the difference. And I think a lot of people that really is what's stopping them, right? So there's
Right.
this idea of like, how do I find people to pay me? And you just nailed it. You just said it perfectly, right? It's not about just finding people to pay you. It's about building those relationships, building that support system, that network, right? For
Right.
you though, was there a moment where and I know you're like super certified and super legit. How did you even come up with the menu for like how to legitimize yourself and how to get the techniques to do what you do? That part was like
Yeah.
astounds me because again, you're like passionate about travel, you want to be in business. How do you like create programs where people pay you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily create program. Well, like, I think it's people know, yes, like like I have lots of certifications. Like, to me, I think part of having that education background, I've always had a love of learning. So I think people also know that I spend the majority of my time, if I'm not planning travel, it's learning. So kind of like I think we talked about before we started recording about working on your business. There are times during the day where I may not necessarily be researching or putting together an itinerary. And if there's pockets of time in between calls, guess what? I might be not necessarily researching a trip for someone, but researching to learn more about XYZ. Or I might be planning, like, I'm actually leaving on a trip next week to go so I can go see more of a destination, meet more people, to become more educated. I used to do a lot more of that, a lot more travel for education and going to conferences. So now it is a lot more online. But I think when people set up consultation calls with me, because that's another thing, you talk about why do people want to work with me? The ones that really value that relationship, they like the fact that I take the time to get to know them. It's not a 1-800 number. It's not like, tell me this, tell me that, and then I book it. Like, we spend time chatting and learning. I find out, where they traveled before, how do they like to travel, I mean, everything about them. So they like that aspect of it. And I think, they then, from the conversation, they hear not necessarily because I'm saying I'm so educated in travel, but when I'm able to say, you know what, this is why you don't want to go here. I get lots of people that want to go to Greece, and for some reason they always want to go in November or December. Greece is cold, and it's, for the most part, like, all of the areas where you're going to stay are shut down. And so a lot of times people, like, I start sharing things like that, and they're like, okay, she actually really knows what she's talking about. She's able to share her expertise, and that's why I work with clients that value my expertise. And I think, I've been able to draw the right client because I'm upfront with people. If you don't want a relationship with someone, if you don't want an expert, if you're just looking for the cheapest deal, we're probably not meant to work together. And so it's got to be a relationship that's mutually beneficial.
That's huge. And oh God, you're so good at this. You're like so good at like I have to say this, like, side note, like, so for me, like, I talk about Israel, like being born there, and we used to travel there and stuff. And after we got a divorce a couple of years ago, or broke up a couple of years ago, like my first impulse was like, oh, I want to go to Israel. Like, I just want to go, like, clear my head. And it for financially and just time wise, it didn't happen. And I think when the pandemic like fixes itself, or we fix it, whatever.
Right.
Depending on which side of the coin you're in here. But when it ends, something that, like, I've thought a lot about is like, there's nowhere else that I would rather go, is to Israel. And my first thought was, oh, talk to Samantha about it. Like, and again, I've been there so many times, and my mom, who is like so Israeli, like, she never really moved. I mean, she's just like
Yeah.
Israeli in Chicago or here, Colorado. Like, I'm like, no, 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 because I feel like I feel like something that you do so what you begin with the fact that you built this network. It's not just, you don't just research. Like, I know you have contacts, like, you have peeps, like, you know the restaurants, like, you know all the things, right? Like, um Was that so fun to create those connections, like in life, like those, like, because right, that's what you do for people.
Yeah.
It's much more personalized.
Absolutely no, and I think that's well, I think that the connections and meeting people, knowing that my clients are going to be taken care of wherever they go. But I think also a lot of people know I feel like I can give a pretty unbiased opinion. So the challenging part, you talk about your mom and she's practically still living in Israel. It's going to be difficult because your mom's going to want you to experience Israel the way that she thinks is best or the way that she loves it, right? And as a travel planner, I can't plan trips the way that I necessarily like to travel or the things that I want to do. I really have to be able to look through the eyes of my client after, talking with them and saying, okay, this is what they envision. This is how they like to travel. These are the things that they think are fun. Whether or not I think they are, it doesn't matter. I have to make that happen for them. And I think that's where travel is sometimes difficult because as soon as people say I want to go here, there, or I hear from I work with lots of honeymooners. People hear that I'm planning my honeymoon, and all of a sudden it's, well, we went here on my honeymoon, or our friend went here, and it's never about them. It's never about what are they going to love or where is going to be their best place to go, or um what are they going to like to do once they get there. It's always about, well, I like this or I like that, and that's hard. I think that's just the human race. We like to talk about ourselves, we like to share what we like, but to really make the trip, if you're giving advice to someone else, it's got to be based on them, and you have to be able to give that expertise, um giving all of the things that they've told you.
This is you. I like really do want to talk to you now about this. I mean, this is how horrible. Like when I took my ex-wife Carrie, who you've met,
Yeah.
who she said, she's like, oh my God, Sam is amazing. I have to work with Sam. I took her to Israel in 2011, right before we got married, and and for me, Israel was always like all my family's there, so it was always like meet up with my cousins, or when my grandparents were alive, like my aunts and uncles and stuff. I don't really have uncles, but like I have aunts. I have one uncle I really like. I have two uncles. This is not important. I'm just thinking I have uncles. But okay, it's fine. But the thing was always to go sit with them, and that's what Israel was. Just go sit at their house, get to know them again. Once
Yeah.
a year, once every few years, like get to reconnect and stuff. Right now, I'm like everyone's old. Everyone has like their own, like all the kids are grown up. Like everyone has their own jobs and families. No one cares. So I'm like, what do like how do you plan for someone? I love that you nailed it, because like I don't even know what I want to do. Like, because again, when I took her, it was about, the intention was I want everyone to meet Carrie, right? And
Right.
my mom's like, you should take her to Jerusalem or Eilat, all these places. And I was like, no, we have to meet the people. Now, if I go, I'm like, I don't even know what my intention. You're like a travel coach. Like, how does someone figure out what they want for themselves, like
Right.
intuitively or internally?
Well, so what you're talking about, like what your intention is, like I always, if people don't, if they're like intention, I'll always say, what is your goal of the trip? So I always start with like goals, which is funny because you'd think like, I thought travel is supposed to be fun. Why are we talking about goals? But I think everyone has a different goal or intention. Intention actually is a much, much nicer sounding word, for what they want to get out of something. Like I know, like I've learned that I have some clients, that keep working with them over and over again, and some years they're like, okay, you know what, this year has been really rough. I need all relaxation. I don't want you to plan anything other than, my butt needs to be planted in the sand or by the pool. And then I want, some spa stuff and this and that. I want to feel pampered. But then maybe the next year they're like, you know what, I have just been feeling like I'm in a rut, doing the same thing every day. And I want like some adventure, or I want to get out and see more things. And we're able to completely change a trip where it's not going to just be I mean, there's still pampering things you can do, but where they might be a little bit more on the go. And I think it's just all about that customization piece, but knowing everyone's going to be in a different place from year to year. I mean, look at, well, where we're at from, even 2019 to 2020 to 2021. But you know what? We go through different phases in life and places in life. And I mean, or even it might not have anything to do with that year, but just, you know what? Hey, I'm, in a place now where I just value seeing family more, and I want to spend more time with them and do a couple excursions and things. Can we make that balance? And there's ways of doing that. But I think um there's again, it's all about getting to know the person. It's getting to know the client, and really finding out what's going on, where their head is at, and then being able to provide recommendations from there.
That's huge because, like, yeah, like I love that idea that like you're in different places at different parts of your
Yeah,
life, right? So yeah, like now I'm like, yeah, like I'll go visit my family. That's like a day, but like I'm like, what is it that I enjoy doing outside of just like maybe going to see shows, you know? But I was like,
right.
why can't there be a trip around shows?
Yeah. When you think of different phases of life too, like I've worked with parents that are now empty nesters. Kids have gone off to college and their trips have always been about the kids and going to like, destinations where the kids are going to have fun. And now they're like, well, what do we do? Like what do we do? Like here we are, two adults, and we don't know what do we do as adults on our own to have fun in it? It's like, okay, well, let's talk a little bit about like what did the two of you enjoy doing before you had the kids, or what are some things that maybe you've put on hold because you know that the kids wouldn't have necessarily liked it. And it's really kind of delving into more of that conversation for people to realize like, okay, I can do things differently now. And what would I have fun doing?
What it's so we're going deep here. What will I have fun doing? Isn't that kind of the context for travel? Period. We don't like. I never thought about that, but isn't that like what you're contextualizing? What like I'm gonna go to a separate place, and what will I have fun doing? That never crossed my mind.
Yeah, well, and because sometimes it's the same things that you like to do. Like some people, here in Colorado, people love to like ski and snowboard. And there are people I've met that are like, I want to go to Japan and ski and snowboard. Like I want to keep doing the thing I love everywhere else. But sometimes people say, you know what, I don't get the opportunity to necessarily like I don't know, there's not like sandboarding here. That's one of my favorite memories from going, being in Egypt. So they're like, I want to, I've always wanted to try out sandboarding. So that's like on my list for when I go to Egypt, or if I go to Dubai or something like that, where they're able to take something that they've maybe seen on TV or have always wanted to try, and it becomes a special memory as a part of that trip.
Sam, this has been such a cathartic, such like a interview for me because I'm like, oh, I know what I want to do when I go to Israel. I have it all planned out. I want to go do my show 3 times, like in different locations.
Uh-huh.
My comedy show with the music. I want to work, and I want to bring my I want to like coach my clients, virtually, but also I want to do workshops there. Like that sounds
Right.
fun to me.
Right. Yeah.
Is
And
that a
you know,
vacation?
yeah, I mean, it's whatever. If that meets your goals and intentions, absolutely. And then the only other thing that I would, I always recommend to people if they're open, again, it's if they're open to it, is sometimes people don't know what is available. So it's like, hey, if maybe you have a free day and you want to do something different, how about, X, Y, or Z? And sometimes people are like, you know what, I didn't even realize I could do that there, or I've never tried that before. Like, let's do it. And like one thing I think about, people all the time will say, I want to go somewhere, and I do not want to cook while I'm on vacation, right? Because it's like you're doing it at home all the time. But then yet you can suggest in a really cool place if there's this like culinary experience and people are like, sign me up, I can't wait to cook. But it's totally different than like having to think about like what's for dinner tonight versus creating this masterpiece in another country with all the ingredients you picked out from the market, getting to learn from, a chef from the air. Like that is a totally different experience. You might actually really dislike doing something at home and then really love, a piece of it somewhere else. So I think it's just a matter of seeing, how, I guess, how open of a mind a lot of people have, how, and I guess maybe it isn't open of mind, but like, I guess how open they are to different experiences, or if it's I like what I like, all right, well, we're going to find you a place where you can explore that and do that there.
Sam, I love this so much. Like I was like, so I adore you. I make no secret about it. Like you and Jeremy, like I adore you guys, you know? So like everyone knows it. I put it all out there. So of course, so like when we talked about having you on the show, I was like, yeah, of course, like no brainer. I like but now that I'm like, this is, it's like I feel a little bit vulnerable here because I'm like, this is really shaping for me, like just in general, like what do I love, like, and how to create a space that is outside of my regular run of the mill day to day, like how to create, like I really am starting to see the purpose as an adult because I didn't, again, like vacations, travel for me was always something that was done by my parents or planned by my parents.
Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed to say, even into my 30s, because I was just I broke for so much of my 30s emotionally and financially. Um, and so it was whenever they were like, hey, we're planning a family trip on a cruise or whatever. Whereas my sister and her family, like my brother-in-law and my niece, they love vacations. They just like soak it up. Like, because they're both like, or all three of them are like super high strung type A personalities. They just love sitting on the beach and
They
chilling.
got to
Whereas
get
like
away.
they gotta get away. It's for them,
Yeah.
it's contextualized.
Yeah.
Contextualized relaxation. I can relax when I'm away. For me, I'm like, if there's more people to meet, if there's more people to talk to connect, to work, to create something, I'm like, fuck, like I'm there,
Yeah.
like
Right.
that's what I love to do. And then on top of that, I was like, oh, like the rest, like I was like, I do love food. Like I love like going to restaurants. And I was like, it would be cool to cook actually for myself, like in another place, which I don't get to do when I'm with my family there in Israel, you know? So this
Right.
like really pieced it together for me. Like, what a cool thing. So again, proof of your genius, where like you just see how travel really fulfills people. And like you said, the only like more travel is the only thing you can have more of is more
Yes.
travel. And
Yes.
again, your social media posts, like really, they're like travel's the best, travel's the cure for Valentine's Day or whatever, you know?
Right. Yes.
And it doesn't, like I don't mean to get all like journalistic on you, but I'm like, with you, it generally doesn't seem to be, and I do have to say this, like from knowing you now, like it doesn't seem that you're ever running away from something with travel. Like, how some people it's like, get away.
Right.
Like I'm really seeing that like it's just such a thing that you love and you just want to share that. So here we go. Here we go. We're doing the thing right now. 2019, you're crushing it. You're living the dream.
Yes.
Then March 2020, almost a year ago now, everything shut down.
Yeah.
Does the like, so you said you were hard to work with in corporate. How hard were you to work with yourself at that moment where you're like, what the fuck? And like, what's going on? Like, what happened inside of you? And again, like I have to say, like, sorry, I'm fast forwarding, but like you still networked the hell out of last year. I'm so proud of you. Okay, so how did you like walk me through internally? Oh my god, piece of news. How do I interact with it, and how do I make the best? Because you really did make the best of last year. I've seen it. Like, so how did you do it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I shouldn't say I don't know because I've lived it. I mean, the last year, I mean, it's hard to believe it has been almost a year, but I think it was, I mean, one, I've just put, all of those, I don't know if they're necessarily habits, but those values in place. Like I just didn't change who I was or what I was going to do just because travel was shut down. So to me, it was, you know what, well, for one, I have to be there for my clients. This is why, they didn't know that there was going to be a pandemic, but you know what, they hired me because they wanted support. So like that, first and foremost, I can't give up on them. Because people asked all the time, they're like, are you going to shut down your agency? Are you going to do this? I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. Like the whole point of me having this is to help people see the world. So we're going to figure out how to help them do that whenever the right time comes. But also too, with having those relationships, sure, did I want to sometimes just not want to talk to anyone? Absolutely, like very challenging days. But then, I would be back to where I was, before, when I had people saying, well, you don't like to talk to anyone, you're not easy to work with. I had to make sure that, like, it's always something you have to work on, and especially being introverted, like, yeah, last year kind of was an introvert's dream, where you're not forced to go anywhere and you're encouraged to stay home and be on your own. But I mean, and I still, just moved everything virtually to Zoom, but I knew I couldn't just like literally shut myself down. So that was, I think, the biggest thing. But just always believing travel was going to come back. It's been like, there are definitely hard days. There's some days where I'm like, gosh, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to travel as freely as we used to. But but the way, what I've been telling my clients, and I have to tell myself, you know what, different isn't a bad thing. And travel is different now. It's probably going to be different for quite a long time, or indefinitely. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's just something we need to readjust our expectations and enjoy it in different ways. I read an interesting just article about how, Hawaii, so a lot of people are choosing to go to Hawaii right now because you don't have all the international requirements of testing and things like that. Well, you think about going to Hawaii just 2 years ago, not just 2 years ago, but people always go, and one of the things they want to do is they want to do a luau. Well, just 2 years ago, luau's would be like, hundreds of people. They're big events. You're sharing a table with all these other families. You're going to the buffet and trying all the food. You've got your dancers. They'll invite people up on stage. They make it fun. It's one of the touristy things everyone's got to experience at least once, and then maybe you're good from there. Well, we can't do that now. You can't have different families sharing a space. You're not going to eat food off of a buffet. You can't have 300 people in one space. But Hawaii is literally redefining the luau experience for people that maybe never got to do it before, and they're making it safe. Again, it's different, but it's not bad. And it's still a way to experience one of those, those, again, it's a touristy thing, but it's one of those things in Hawaii that people have, they've looked forward to, or they say that's the one thing that I want to go and do that, and besides, surfing on the beach or whatever. But again, we're finding different ways to do things, but just, I think phrasing it differently or looking at it differently, that's something I've had to keep doing. And I also have to keep essentially like coaching my clients to do.
I know you're such a travel coach. Like I'm literally like moved. I'm like, oh, you're so good at that. Um, d- do you think it's coming? I mean, like, but it's gonna like I feel like there's gonna be a resurgence though, right? Or do you feel like it's gonna be forever changed?
You know,
Traveling.
I mean, I think eventually, and it's hard because I think there was so much promise at the beginning of the year with the vaccine. Like everyone was like, okay, the vaccines come out, and as soon as people get it, we're gonna be able to travel again. And really, that is not. I think it kind of came by surprise for everyone that because there still are so many unknowns with the vaccine, a lot of other countries and places are saying, yes, you may have the vaccine, but we still don't know how effective it is, which is why we're not allowing it to take place of testing. So totally get that. I think there's just still so much for us to all learn as far as, like keeping numbers down, whether it's getting vaccinated, keeping distance, all of those things that I think the thought that it was going to come back sooner, I think we were just a little short sighted in how much there still is to learn and see how things are going to pan out. I mean, I do think as more and more people get vaccinated and the more we can see its effectiveness, that will help as well. Because, you think about, like, I've thought about it. I mean, in the past, when I've done a lot of travel, like, going to like South Africa, and I'm trying to think of, I mean, there's quite a few destinations I've gone to where I've had to get, like typhoid and, like, I mean, malaria, like you get all these different vaccines and you take these different pills to be able to go there to make sure you're not going to get infected. But obviously, there's been history of the effectiveness of those things, right? We just need a little more history. And I think that's where it's just going to take, I think, a little bit longer than what we thought.
Well, and to be fair too, like this has happened, I think, to a lot of travelers. I know it happens to my sister all the time. It's happened to me. You and I have spoken about this. Like, the, there's also something good about this that, like, I know I've gone, like, we've flown so many times and gotten sick, right? Where you come home and you're just like, or you get there and you're sick as hell.
Right.
Like, so I think there's also maybe like there's reforms that are or just changes right now that are helping travelers be healthier, right? Where like I mean, you said you traveled to like Atlanta, like nationally,
Yeah.
amidst a time where people were wearing masks, and you still got like strep or something, right? What was it? It was like,
Yeah, we're not still not sure if it was got like strep throat or it was tonsillitis. Yeah, I came back incredibly sick from that trip. And thankfully, tested negative. And once I was on amoxicillin, it all got cleared up. But yeah, it was pretty crazy that despite all of these additional safety protocols and procedures and cleanliness. Things put into place, that yeah, you still can definitely get sick. So obviously, if stuff's still being passed around, it's just a matter of how do we get what the vaccine in a better place to say, to make people feel more comfortable. I think that's the thing, is it's also a level of comfort. And there has to be this, people have to feel confident that they're not going to go somewhere and end up in a hospital, or whatever it may be.
and I should say that's what I don't mean to say like, well, travel's dangerous. No, no, no. I
Right.
don't
Yeah,
mean it
yeah,
like that. I just
yeah.
mean like we've like it sounds like I could see a future where things are even healthier as a
Yeah.
result of this, right?
No,
Like,
definitely. And I think again, we talked earlier about doing the same thing over and over again. It goes for, I mean, for everything. There's no reason why it's necessarily bad that we're changing the way that we look at travel. Like I even look at like families are trying to figure out, like, how do we travel now? You talk about like going on cruises, and obviously like cruising is definitely no go right now. So more families are saying like, hey, like if we take the cost over everyone in our family and we rent a private yacht and go sail to some more remote islands, it's actually going to come out to be, it might be a little more expensive, but like not really that much more than a super expensive ship, or getting this, big suite for the whole entire family. So we're just finding different ways of doing something where people feel safe and they feel confident that they're not going to get sick. Or, I mean, there's ways of looking at things differently. And again, it's not bad.
And like my brother-in-law and sister, they rented an RV. So like instead of staying in a hotel, instead of like they did a trip of Colorado. And then my brother-in-law had to, for work, he had to travel to Oklahoma, rented an RV, stayed in the RV the whole time,
Right.
right? So I could see where like someone like you, again, now, like I feel like it's scary, right? There's so many changes going on, but I could see where like someone like you who gets like the internal, and maybe you're not marketing yourself like this, I don't know, but to me what just clicked in this conversation is like you really get travel, like you get the beauty of it, the point of it. I'm like, no, I'm never planning a trip. This is why I didn't plan trips, because I didn't think like I'm never planning a trip without you. Like that's ridiculous. Like because
Oh,
you get it.
yeah. Yeah. No, and I think a lot of people, again, they go either by advice of other people, or they see, like, I mean, social media is great. It's a great way to keep, your name and face, especially if you're an entrepreneur, in front of other people. But I think also, it becomes the people comparing each other, to other people that they don't know. And even when it comes to travel, looking and saying, well, gosh, I guess if I want to vacation, I need to go to a beach, or I need to do this. And there's some people that really don't like doing that. And it's like, you don't have to do what everyone else is doing. There's lots of different ways of getting around, getting in an RV, whatever it may be, whatever, makes you feel happy, and making that your vacation. So I think it's just challenging sometimes, because if you don't know what's out there, you know what you know, and there's so much more than I think a lot of people realize.
And that's, I'm sending you my resume to work for your company, because I'm like, I'm all in now. I'm like, there's parts of, I'm from Chicago, so and this is not true of maybe everyone from Chicago, but in my head, LA, New York, Las Vegas, um Washington D.C., like Seattle, like the big city,
Big
but
city.
like the big, or Florida, right? But I think like there's so much amazing country in this country, right? Like there's so many
Right.
incredible people. I have clients all over the country, and they tell me that like they're going for like weekend staycations, like an hour up the street, eh,
Hmm.
to like the most lovable bed and breakfasts, or like incredible mom and pop restaurants in Wisconsin or whatever. Like there's an amazing country out there. People need to contact you for like how to revitalize and reshape the form of travel now that we are contained in the United States.
Right. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
just
I mean, well, definitely. Well, I mean, I've definitely had a lot of conversations. People are wanting to do more domestic travel. Now, I don't know if you remember, so I mainly specialize international. I also do Hawaii and Alaska, but I'm always able to, I have been telling people, like, even here in Colorado, like, you can go an hour and a half away. You don't have to necessarily like skiing or snowboard. It could be the middle of summer, and you could go to a really cool cabin and go have the most like remote, fun, relaxing experience ever. And like, I think a lot of people, I've talked to some that have almost lived here their entire lives, and they're like, we've been seeing areas of the state we didn't even know, because we've always been going other places. So I do think it's a great opportunity. You talk about, like, well, what do I want to do when I'm on vacation? Try some things locally, and then when it becomes time to travel internationally, you can take those new things that you love and try it in a new place. Like, I think that also kind of sets the tone for people that might be a little nervous about traveling. Say you have a family, you have young kids. A lot of times the first trip is nerve wracking. Go do something that's an hour away, and then that way, if there's meltdowns, you can go back home if you need to, before you do it on your first long haul flight, going somewhere new. So I think that, again, it's just shifting the way that we think about travel, and being able, and I'm not going to use the word pivot, because I know no one likes that, but just readjusting with what you have to work with now, and you can still dream for the future. So I mean, that's really what I'm doing right now. Like, I'm thinking about, for my business and for my own personal travel, okay, what do we have to work with? Because I've always just been able to go wherever. And I'm having to really rethink, what's going to serve me on a personal level. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's not a bad thing. I don't mind it. I mean, a lot of my travels are based on where my clients want to go. And I mean, even with, over 60 countries that I've been to, there are still requests that I get, and I'll think, okay, I need to get there and check it out, develop relationships, and get some, level of knowledge under my belt, so that when people are asking for this destination, I know. So now it's kind of, that's what I've been thinking about for 2021. What is open? Where can I go that I haven't been to yet? And to get people thinking about, some different destinations that maybe, because like everyone wants to go, Italy or France or here and there. Well, you know what? Okay, they're closed. Guess what? We're going to find something else where you can still accomplish those same, goals or intentions, but just in a different area of the world.
I love that. Okay, so then I'm gonna ask you second to last question.
Yeah.
What is the most like niche? This is just like a fun like story question, but like, what is the most like niche, like off the beaten path place that you've ever been, and like, what's the craziest story that happened around that?
Oh, and a crazy, oh my gosh, actually I do have so this was just let's see if we're in 2021, I think this was December 29 2018 2019. Get my year, it's so hard when you stay at home for a whole year. So went and spent almost 3 weeks in Eastern Europe in December, which most people would never sign themselves up for, because it's just like this past weekend, it's like, below freezing temperatures. And I mean, I'm not very good in the cold, but I thought, what, I had, a December is usually a slower time for planning travel. So I do also try to travel when my clients don't need me as much. And I thought, well, this is the time to go to Eastern Europe, and I'm going to try and hit as many countries as I can at once. And I knew, because it was going to be low season, there wouldn't be as big a crowds, it'd be easier to get around, different things like that. Well, one of the last countries of the trip went to Romania. Again, not really a destination that's on a lot of people's radar. And it was actually, was there right after Christmas, before the New Year. Was there for New Year's, and actually left on New Year's Day. And the craziest thing that happened during the trip was because it was the holidays, and it's so cold. There's just, I mean, there wasn't as much going on. All, like, had gone to a couple Christmas markets, those were starting to close down for the year. And found myself with one day that was more open than I thought it was going to be. And actually, and Jeremy and I, we were traveling together, and I said to him, I was like, you know what? Let's go to the train station and let's go check out the schedule and buy a ticket. And we are going to, we're just going to go explore. And went out and saw these like really cool castles for the day, and like, just like, I mean, just went off in kind of the middle of nowhere, had a fantastic day, came back. And I mean, I think that's like one of our favorite memories now, is it was something that was totally unplanned, and we just made it fun. Went to a different area of Romania that we had never, we actually, it was Transylvania, and hadn't planned on going there. And I mean, I don't know, it's still a favorite memory of the trip. Also, another interesting memory of the trip too, a lot of people don't know that Romania actually makes incredible wines. They actually have a lot of vineyards there, and so that's actually a reason why I would want to go back. But learned so much while I was there, but also learned too that a destination that I wasn't initially too jazzed about seeing, like, I kind of thought like, yeah, I'll go and check it out, but now I'm like, okay, when can I go back?
What was Transylvania crazy? Like, I have to ask. Like, was it nuts?
I mean, it was just, well, I mean, again, it was low, there weren't that many tourists there, but it was just cool as far as like the historical aspect of it, and just these old buildings. And I mean, and when you start to really get out into the countryside, it, like, I mean, you really do, it sounds cheesy, so like, you're in a whole different world, but like, you're out there with the, like, a lot of tourists are not traveling that far by train by themselves to go see these little small towns, and I mean, it was the best experience. I mean, you go to the restaurants and you're pretty much like the only, non-local there. And, then you got to just figure out, like, point to something on the menu, because or use your phone. There's lots of apps now where you can actually hover over other languages and it'll translate for you. But it's like, okay, what am I ordering, or what am I going to get? And I mean, it adds to the fun of it too.
That's incredible. Oh my God. You have so many more stories. I want to hear more stories. But
Yeah.
in the interest of time, what is the best way for people to contact you?
I would say best way website, planyourperfectvacation.com, because there's ways to hook up with me, there, social media, wherever. But yeah, planyourperfectvacation.com, or you can always email me, Samantha at planyourperfectvacation.com. But this has just been so much fun. It's always fun chatting with you. And I mean, and you talk about transformation, and I know I've told you it and Jeremy's told you it, but I also think that just having the not letting my introvert creep in and having the confidence to do things like this podcast and shows and stuff is, I can attribute that to you, because before we worked together last year and I was filming those videos, I would just, you talk about getting in your own head. I would get in my own head, and that it's always been a challenge for me. And now it's I'm not going to say it's there, but it's becoming a lot more comfortable, and I don't like freak out as much beforehand, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on video or on camera or taped or whatever. And it's just becoming more of a conversation. So I appreciate you helping me get over that.
Oh my God, I appreciate you. No, you like this was phenomenal today. Like we'll talk more about it after the show, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I have so much I want to. No, you did great. And like this was what a clear articulation of your process. And I mean, and thank you for being vulnerable about the introvert thing. Like I'm an introvert, like I'm a talkative introvert, but yeah, this in many ways the isolation was a gift. And I get that. And so I'm keeping my mask on. Jeremy can make fun of me about it, but I'm keeping my mask on for when we go back to networking and
Right.
because
Yeah.
I don't need people smelling my bad breath or whatever. Or like I got schmutz in the teeth or but
I know it actually kind of helps, if you don't really want to do your makeup that day. I mean, most of your, for me, like most of my face is covered up. It helps. If you get a zit on your chin, cover it up.
I was talking with my daughter about this because I'm going through like this insecurity right now because I'm like kind of back into dating and stuff. And I'm like I'm insecure about my looks. It's like it's like all this stuff coming from childhood, whatever. But I told my daughter, I'm like I love the mask. I was like, she's 5 years old. I'm like, I love the mask. I feel better looking with the mask. And she's like, you are, Dad. That's like saying you have a face for radio. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, what? Because she's gorgeous. So like in comparison, I get where she's coming from. Like she's like, you are better looking with a mask on. I get it. It's this area. I feel like it's too expressive.
It's also, I mean, I feel like you can kind of turn it into a little bit of a fashion statement too,
Yeah.
different colors, match your outfit, there's plenty of ways to make it a positive thing.
I
So
know. I'm trying to wear more colors in life, so I think I'm gonna do it in the mat. Whatever. We'll talk more about this.
we will talk more.
I got you. I got you, sister. All right, Sam. Thank you so much. Chat like planyourperfectvacation.com. I'll put the what's it called. I'll put the tag.
Like banner up or
Banner, thank you. So I was
yeah.
going to say banner. I'll put the banners up. You are wonderful. Please, please, if you guys are thinking of traveling, even amidst this situation, safely. And again, like everything we're saying today, it's like all about being safe. Like I said, I was OCD before this, so I'm like a little bit like I get to wear gloves and sanitize my gloves. I'm in heaven. But if you guys are in a place where you do want to travel, please contact Samantha. She is worth it. And certainly, I know international is obviously like the big focus. So when you're opening up the international, like run to Samantha, don't walk.
Right.
You are wonderful, Sam.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Good.